My abduction story. I'm a singer in an up-and-coming rock band. We're small, but we just released an album and can feel our big break coming. We started around 3 years ago and have mostly played clubs and bars. Lucky for us, we got offered to play our first festival, and that's where I'm headed. I was driving down a long stretch of highway while the rest of the band took a bus. I often drive myself to be alone with my thoughts or come up with new lyrics. The sun was beginning to set on a pretty hot day. I had the AC on full blast trying to beat the desert heat. At times like these, I always thought about the future. We all wanted to blow up and become legends who shook the world with every release. People around us were always rude and cruel about following our dreams, but we've come too far and none of us planned on turning back now. With my guitar in the back seat and my hopes high, the future looked bright. After a few hours of driving, it was dark out. The sky was clear with thousands of twinkling stars overhead. I was about 4 hours out from the venue and wasn't the least bit sleepy. I planned to keep driving until I arrived and get some shut-eye on the tour bus. I barely passed any other cars in all these hours of driving, but for the first time, I started to see a pair of headlights come into view. They were somewhat bright, and I figured it was probably an 18-wheeler. I drove like normal, but I couldn't help noticing something odd. The lights grew brighter and brighter, more so than you'd expect. At one point, they started coming over into my lane. I planned to hit the ditch, but the light was right on top of me. I was convinced the driver must have been asleep behind the wheel. At this point, it was too late to do anything. I was about to be run down by this huge vehicle. Next thing I knew, everything went dark. I was sure this was it for me. After what seemed like an eternity, I slowly started coming to. With my eyes squinting, I was able to make out a bright light hanging over my head. I didn't know what was going on or where I could be. Maybe I survived the crash and was rushed to a hospital. It did seem like I was laying on an operating table. But before I knew it, my hopeful thoughts were proven wrong. As I heard a door open and out walked 3 or 4 people. At least I thought they were people, until they stood over me. To my horror, I saw 4 short and stumpy gray beings. They had huge black eyes and pale white skin. The only thing I could compare them to were aliens. I wanted to get up and run, but I couldn't move. They seemed to be fixated at my chest. I struggled to look down. When I did, it was a grisly sight. My stomach was sliced open and different tubes were inserted into the incision. Oddly enough, I felt no pain, but the image was enough to send me into shock. It seemed the creatures knew it too, as one approached me and placed one bony finger on my forehead before speaking. And not from its mouth either. I could hear a voice in my head. It was a peaceful one that assured me I was okay, that they cared and I would be released soon. As if on cue, I started to calm down. My heartbeat and nerves all went back to normal. Not because I wasn't afraid, I was absolutely terrified. It's as if the creature had relayed that message directly into my brain, so my body would follow suit and bend to their will. I watched as the aliens dug around in my chest for what seemed like forever. One would begin plucking hairs from my head and taking samples of snot and saliva. No matter what they did, I felt nothing. But why was this happening? Were they trying to help me, or maybe harvest my organs? Was all that about releasing me actually a lie? Soon they would stop rooting around and grab an odd device. It seemed to be metallic and shaped like a pin. Once activated, it emitted a beam of light aiming at my stomach. With no difficulty at all, it closed up the incision they made. I then felt my body levitate off the table and float effortlessly in midair. Suddenly, several screens surrounded every inch of my stripped body. I started hearing some sort of clicking sound. My only guess was that they were taking pictures. Once done, they all gathered around me. At this point, I felt so appalled and helpless. They could do anything they wanted to me, and I couldn't even fight back. One would slip something behind my ear and slowly insert it into my skin. In my head, I could hear a voice that told me I was being chosen to be monitored. that with my help they could better understand my race and possibly save us from ourselves. After saying this, they held their long, skeleton-like hands over my head. I became somewhat groggy and quickly fell into a deep sleep. I'm not sure what happened next, but I remember waking up in my car. I was sitting in the front seat with my seatbelt fastened and everything. I felt no pain from what I endured, but I remembered everything. From my stomach being sliced open to every part of my body being violated. I started my car and just drove, feeling so confused on what to do next. There's no way the police would believe me, and what could they do anyway? I ended up arriving at the venue and telling my bandmates everything, but of course, they would laugh and tell me I probably had some strong dope the night before. I couldn't let it go. I screamed that I knew what happened to me. I didn't care who believed me, and I ended up walking out on them. A few months have passed now, and this incident changed my life completely. I ended up so afraid and paranoid that I stopped leaving my house altogether. I sent my band an email saying that I was leaving and had no problem with them replacing me. Regardless of their thoughts on the matter, I knew things would never be the same for me. I ended up getting a customer service job so I could work from home. I know you all might think I'm being a bit dramatic, but I'm so afraid and feel like I've got good reason to be. The few times I have left my house to buy necessities, I saw things. Floating lights in the sky, all different shapes and sizes. They made whirring-like sounds and seemed to follow me everywhere I went. It felt as if they were keeping a close eye on me or maybe planning to abduct me again. Several times I'd receive phone calls late at night from unknown numbers. When I'd answer, all you could hear was this weird electrical interference and some occasional beeps. For the sake of my sanity, I left my phone off most of the time. I didn't think therapy would help either, so I kept it all locked up inside. I had plans with my life, but now I just don't know. Everything that happened to me was real, and I can't just let it go. Maybe someday I could try, but definitely no time soon. I wanted to share my story here in the hopes that someone can relate. And never forget, we are not alone in the universe. Follow for more.